I'm beginning to think. Yes, I'm beginning to think. Thoughts become me.
Welcome to The Cost of Not Paying Attention, hosted by nationally recognized speaker Janine Hamner Holman. Janine knows what it takes to attract and retain world-class talent. Join her here each week on The Cost of Not Paying Attention as we use brain science, leadership, management, and real-life challenges managers face to explore the places where we aren't paying attention.
Welcome to The Cost of Not Paying Attention. I'm your host, Janine Hamner Holman. What am I paying attention to? So, y'all, it has been a couple of weeks. The first weekend in March, I was down in San Diego for the birthday party of my 90-year-old mother-in-law. And Chaz, if you would just put up the picture. So this is my 90-year-old mother-in-law literally doing the hustle at her birthday party. Thanks, Chaz. So one of the things that was so great about this is here is this woman. I texted a friend of mine during the party and I said, I want to be spending my 90th birthday party dancing. She started dancing from the moment she entered the party until the moment she left the party about 3.5 hours later. And at one point, the song Do the Hustle, which was a big hit in like 1975, came on, and she was literally doing the hustle. And it was so great because it also connected then to my experience this last weekend of me doing the hustle in a very different way. So I had created a goal for myself that I was going to publish my new book no later than last Monday. And so what that meant was I was working with my editor over the weekend before. We were doing all of this stuff to get the book ready so that then I spent 6 hours with my communications director on Monday, and we got the book published, which was amazing. Thank you very much. And then Tuesday, I had a couple of calls, got in the car, drove from Pasadena to Fresno, and it's been raining here. So it took about 4 hours to get to Fresno, where then the next day, Wednesday, I delivered a keynote talk and attended the conference for several hours and then got back in the car and drove back to Los Angeles and got back into Los Angeles Wednesday night. Thankfully, smartly, I had given myself the day on Thursday as a recovery day. And I realized that I really needed that day. While I love keynote speaking and I love doing this podcast and I love being with people, I actually get my energy from being by myself, which is one of the definitions of being an introvert. That I get my energy to do what I do by being by myself. And so I really needed that day on Thursday, yesterday, to just chill out and be by myself and read. And I watched a little silly TV and I petted my cat and recharged my batteries. And I got to thinking about those two different experiences of doing the hustle, which is a great intro to our guest for today. And I am so excited for this conversation. So I want to introduce everyone to Garima Gupta. And I'm going to start by reading a quote from Jane Goodall, which is every individual matters. Every individual has a role to play. Every individual makes a difference. Garima's wholehearted belief is that this saying is really what drives her work in inclusion, equity, diversity, and in all kinds of other work that she does. And she believes, as do I, that our individual voices matter, no matter how small the platform or how small the ideas. And she is a human resource leader working for many years across many industries and geographies. So check this out, y'all. India, China, Australia, Sub-Saharan Africa, in the US, the UK, and Central America. And she has seen firsthand the difference that small voices can make. And these issues have become a high priority at a time when human resources is really challenged to constantly improve employee experiences, invest in talent, and adapt to rapid change. She does a lot of workshops and she speaks at events on inclusion, equity, and diversity, and loves connecting with other people about their experiences and helping organizations that are really scaling up rethink their culture and become more open to other cultures as they grow in countries and regions. Welcome to the show, Garima.
Thank you, Janine. And it's a pleasure to be here talking to you on your very important topic and very important podcast topic as well. Would love to share my ideas and learn from you as well.
Yes, please. So obviously, one of the things so Garima and I had a wonderful conversation when we were talking about what might make for a great podcast. And one of the things that when I asked Garima the question, which I'll just go ahead and ask you again. So, what is something that you've become aware of that either consciously or not consciously we're not paying enough attention to, and what's the cost of that?
I think the biggest thing that I have come to my own realization with is that we are saying that, when people ask you, how are you these days, the answer is not that, hey, I'm good, I'm fine, or I'm doing well. But the most common answer that you will hear, and no matter where you are, is that I am so busy, I am swamped, I'm up to my eyeballs with work, with this, with kids, with something or the other. And so busyness these days is this badge of honor.
Yes.
Busyness these days is, almost like a status symbol.
Yes.
And we all want to wear it. We all want to have that as our status because, and there have been lots of research, and we'll talk a lot about it, about how people believe there's a perception that if you tell people that I'm busy, I'm doing so much, somehow they believe that you are successful, you're rich, you're famous, you're this and that. Because if you tell, hey, I'm having a good time, I'm taking it easy, I've been doing lots of reading and playing with my kids, and then they're like, oh, I think their job is not that important. I think they're just taking it easy, or they might not be making so much money. Maybe they got laid off, whatever that perception. But actually, there have been researchers which have shown that. So I think that's what I would love to talk about with you today, Janine, about what is this costing us, right? We are putting ourselves in that place where we keep saying that let's hustle, let's be busy. And that hustling that you showed of your mother-in-law, no, that's not the kind of hustle you're talking about. All power to her, more power to people who want to do that kind of hustle.
Right.
But it's the other kind of hustle that you were explaining that, you had the sanity to give yourself a day, but imagine if you hadn't.
Right.
What could that lead to? And what are we losing without even realizing what we are losing when we are putting ourselves in that grind constantly, nonstop?
Right. I love this conversation, and I think we can all identify with this reality. And actually, when I was prepping for our conversation today, I came across this article. Chaz, can you bring up HBR1? So this is an article from the Harvard Business Review. And what they are talking about is exactly what you are pointing to, that we have been increasingly using our busyness, our crazy schedules as a badge of honor. And this last sentence here, simply put, busyness has become a status symbol. And this was actually the first time that I had ever seen this term, time poverty. And I think that is a really important concept, because when we think about scarcity, when we think about a poverty, not enough
Right.
of something, it triggers really key things. And so I'm wondering if you can illuminate some for us around sort of this scarcity, not enough time idea, and what the impacts of that are of that.
Yeah. And there's two things to this, right? This time poverty thing that you brought up. One is that truly asking yourself, are you really poor in time? Or are you poor in time management?
Right.
Or are you poor in prioritization? Or because, when we say we don't have time for this, then it truly, truly means that this is not a priority, right? Whether it is a basketball game that we needed to go for our kid, or it's a, recitation that we wanted to listen for, a kid reciting a poem that they wrote, or whatever that might be, right? That book that we haven't read, which is lying there in its cover, it's because what have we prioritized? And more often than not, what we find is that the human nature is that, we'll go to the easiest thing possible. And the easiest thing these days is what? It is our wonderful iPhones or whatever smartphones that you are addicted to. Right. And it's easy to, scroll on it. It's easy to look at Facebook and, just keep on scrolling on Instagram with the various reels, or even look at that email that, it's not important. It's not required for you to answer right now. You can answer it on Monday, but you will respond to it and make yourself feel that, you did something. So we all want to be in that place where we feel like we did something. But one of the concepts that I think we are all trying to learn, even in our performance management at work, is what is the impact, right? What is the impact of your doing? And so if you've spent a very busy day, and if you were to write down, what did you achieve today, right? What did you get out of it? What is the one thing that you did, you felt, right, this is a good thing I did, this was a productive thing. And oftentimes we will find is that we can write down that list of activities that we did, but then when you come to writing the impact, it's, all head scratches. And that's what happens in a lot of organizations when people are writing their, performance reviews, and it's review season again, where activities are so many. I woke up at so early. I was attending meetings till so late. But then what did you achieve by that in the year, in the quarter, in the week? And that's where people are stumped to say, I didn't achieve anything, but I was so busy. Like I spent all of my time at work. What else do you want me to do? How do you think I'm working 70 hours a week? How many more hours do you need from me? And the answer is again, that no, it's not the more hours. Maybe you do 4 hours of work every day, but then what's the achievement, right? So it is that, if you remember, Stephen Covey had shown us this quadrant, which is what is urgent, what is important, what is not important, what is not urgent, right? And so our understanding of the urgent and the important is often not so clear. That line is so thin that we forget. And that's why this concept of time poverty then comes in all of our lives, where we are like, oh my God, I have no time to, read a book. I have no time to smell the roses and stop and, look at all things important. It's because we are not giving ourselves time. So we are making ourselves time poor. It's not work. It's not somebody else. Oftentimes we need to look inwards and not have, the finger pointed at somebody else, because 3 fingers are pointing right back at us to say, what have you done? And it's hard to take it in, because believe me, when I took it in and somebody pointed this out to me, I was like, no, what are you talking about? I have like a large team and manage so many people, and
Right.
all of my time is going in the one-on-one and the coaching. But was it really? Was I not just getting in the busyness and keeping the hustle on, so that my colleagues and my boss and everybody thought that I am so busy? But at the end of the day, what do I have to show for it, right? So I think that is the time poverty concept, at least how I have understood it.
Yeah, I love all of the different things that you're pointing to in that. And I was on the phone or on Zoom with a client earlier today, and she was talking about the organization that she leads, and her challenge with, I have some folks who are high up in the organization who are able to, go and play golf and do these things, and like, why am I not able to do these things? Like, well, let's take a look at it. Because the person who says you're not able to do it is you. So, I for years, I wanted to learn how to scuba dive. And I decided that I would spend the time and the energy and the money when I was going to go someplace that I could dive. And then the year before I finally realized I was being stupid, I was in Hawaii and I was in Mexico on the coast, and I was someplace else. And then I realized, okay, we never actually have enough time. We never actually have enough money. It's all about how we choose, as you were saying, how we choose to prioritize, how we choose to make decisions, to spend our time, to spend our money. And I live in Los Angeles. I live, 14 miles from the ocean. And right off of our coast is Catalina Island, which is surrounded by the world's largest kelp forest, where there are a lot of fishes. So, like, I am in prime scuba diving territory all the time. So for my 40th birthday, actually, I signed up and I learned how to scuba dive. And it was one of the greatest things that I ever did for myself. And it reinforced with me this idea that, and I talk with organizations all the time about this. They're like, we really need to focus on whatever, employee engagement or emotional intelligence or diversity, or, but we just don't have the money for it. Like, well, show me your budget. I'll show you what your priorities are. We spend money, we spend time on the things that we have decided that we care about. And right. So if we decide that we care about something else, then we reallocate. And, that's the way that it works. But I think because we have all fallen into this, I'm so busy equals I am keeping up with the Joneses. I am worthy. I am a good person. I have an important job. I am making contributions. We've collapsed these two things that actually have nothing to do with one another, because we can be incredibly busy and get absolutely nothing done and make no contributions to society at all. And so our opportunity is to decouple these concepts and to figure out, so what do I care about? What does matter to me? And then how do I prioritize that? And so, Chaz, would you bring up VWM 1, please? So again, as I was prepping for this, I came across this article. And so it's talking about the impact on us of our busy culture. And I was very intrigued by the way they broke down our impact on emotional health. So we're stressed and we're overwhelmed and we're sad and we're frustrated and we're lonely and we feel incompetent and we feel guilty for the things that we're not doing. Chaz, can you also pull up VWM2? And then they looked at the impact on physical health, and muscle tension and restlessness and insomnia and headaches and inflammation and fatigue, changes in our sex drive, digestion issues, cardiovascular issues, compromised immune function, incredibly important as we are still, with the impacts of the COVID virus. Thanks, Chaz. And so, when we think about the impact both on our emotional health and in our physical health for buying into this busyness culture, I wanted to get your take on that, and then I want us to talk a little bit about okay, well, this is wretched. So what do we do about this?
Right. So let me tell you a little bit of an incident, and maybe that illustrates a little bit, because what you got on there, both for physical health, mental health, spiritual health, even financial health, I would say it impacts everything. All of when you are busy and not paying attention, there is a lot of cost, right? As you've illustrated through multiple examples. And so here's an example. I was talking to a friend of mine, she's very successful in her career, you name it, and she's done it, kind of thing, like you published a book and does lots of keynote speaking. She's a very senior exec in a multinational firm. And so she and I were talking about, all these layoffs that are happening and how this is impacting people. We are both in HR, so, we worry about what happens to people and so on and so forth. Right. And so she was telling me that from last 3 years, because since, COVID came into the scene, she hasn't been able to take, time off, like meaningful time off. She's taken a day off here, there, and whatever. Yep. And so much so that at the end of last year, she decided to leave her job. She resigned from her job, which was very precious to her. She'd worked really hard to get to it. And she was doing really well. She's won some awards and so on and so forth. But she was like, my cup is so empty, Garima, that I have nothing to give. And so that is a cost, right? If you empty your cup so much by giving, by hustling, by being so busy, that you will find yourself, that's another kind of poverty, right? Like you have nothing to give. And that leads to that burnout, to that stress, to that anxiety, which leads to, the heart disease, the cardiovascular problems, and all of those. And so those are kind of the underlying cause which is happening, right? We learned about the word burnout so much in the last couple of years, right? During the pandemic, I think that became, apart from some of the other concepts we learned, and then quiet quitting and, all of those other terms started coming up because people were like, oh, I'm burning out. I've given as much as possible, and therefore I have nothing left to give. And therefore, let me, I don't know, quit, or let me quit, period.
Quit, right.
Right. And so that is, for me, a what is happening with a lot of people, where you realize the impact to your health once it is already impacted. Right. So not when you are in it, but once you are, far away, and you've already been impacted either by burnout or stress, or work doesn't seem interesting anymore, because the same work for which you were hustling nonstop, that is the one that's going to burn you out so much, because you are not dividing. Again, the urgent versus important versus non-important, you're not, you're not bringing it up in a way where you're dividing your time equally, so that you are able to give your family life enough time and be able to take that rest, that break. Rest is not reward. I want to just say that out there. And
say that again, please.
Yes, because you deserve rest. Nature has made our body where we are awake for, let's say, 12 hours and we are asleep for 10 to 12 hours. That is how nature designed us. Who are we to then say, though, no, let's hustle up, let's only sleep for 4 hours?
Right.
It's whether we are in our very young age, and there have been a lot of studies where teenagers who are waking up very early, going to high school very early, there was a lot of conversation here in our state that let's make sure that teenagers have enough time to sleep, because when they sleep, that's when they grow, both mentally and physically, right? And it's the same applies to us. As our bodies are aging, as our bodies are, taking on more and learning more, if we don't give it rest, they are not ready to be recuperated and work with the same energy as we are required to. We all feel, right? If you hadn't taken that rest on Thursday, do you feel that you were able to give so much of yourself on Friday?
Absolutely not.
Right. So that is the crux of all of this, that we need to give ourselves space. When we say give space to others, we need to be, and I'm going to make a call out for HR professionals for sure, because we preach well, but we
Right.
don't practice it.
Yeah. So actually, Chaz, would you bring up HBR2? So what this article is about the issue of burnout, and this author who wrote this article for the Harvard Business Review was realizing that organizations that talk about the importance of a work-life balance or work-life harmony are often also doing a bad job at walking that talk, at struggling, as this article says right here in the middle of this quote, struggling to live that value. Thanks, Chaz. So I think, we all at some level, we are aware, and especially through the pandemic, this idea of work-life balance and work-life harmony, because so many people have been working more because we're working from home, has become really important. But then how do we create those effective boundaries? How do we, because right now it is still countercultural to say, I need time, I need to recover, I need to take a vacation, I need time off, I need to sleep more than 4 or 3 hours a night.
Yeah.
So how do we start creating that for ourselves and for our organizations?
Yeah. So I'll say that one thing I learned as well last year was that self-care does not only lead to better outcomes for mental health or reducing burnout.
Yeah.
I think organizations, systems, they play a very big role. And as you were pointing out in that article, it is true, right? There's one thing for me to say that I can I want to take time, or I want to take vacation, or Janine, you know what, I've done enough, I want to go away.
Yeah.
But it's another thing for you as, let's say, my boss or the manager of the team to say, no, we have 3 more priorities to get out before the end of the year, because
Right.
I've promised the CEO so and so and so. And so then when I'm saying prioritization and not understanding the issue of important versus urgent, I think the same goes for leaders in the organization, right? They're no different. They are made of the same cloth. And
Right.
so for them, when what I see in a lot of, and I'm going to say name tech organizations, is that in these hustle of, being first, being the largest, getting to IPO or going beyond IPO, or, whatever that next stage that you want to reach to is,
Right.
this constant pressure of doing so much is embedded in your culture, right? It is rewarded. It is rewarded, whether it is rewarded as you being named as high potential, you being named as a high performer, you've been given that extra bonus, that larger salary, that meaty project, whatever that is. And so what we reward is what we continue to see, right?
Yep.
So I absolutely fully agree to the point that self-help or self-care can only take you so much. And then there is a system angle to it. However, I also believe that I can only change what's in my control, right? So I can affect my team as a leader. I can impact myself as the leader of my family, and so on and so forth. So that's why today's conversation, I think, is less about the system. Yes, the systems need to change. And that, I would say, is a separate conversation, and we should have that separate conversation.
That will be part 2.
That will be part 2. But I think today, what I'm talking about is that the individual has some blame to take as well.
Absolutely.
And the individual has some agency. And it is that agency that we have to use to say, what can I cut, right? You have to start somewhere. If there is so much clutter around you, then you have to start somewhere to say, okay, this piece on my left side, I'm going to fix that first.
Yeah.
And then come to the right side, and then come, so on and so forth. So that's what I'm talking about, that what can you do today? What can you do which is in your control to be able to get some of that back? Because the fact of the matter is, if tomorrow you were in the hospital because of this cardiovascular disease, because of that stress and burnout and anxiety, nobody from your office is going to come and give you a pot of soup. Or maybe they come one day and send you some, food service and some
Right.
flowers, but that's
Right.
about it, right?
Yeah.
They cannot care and they will not care anymore. No matter how empathetic the organization is, how empathetic your leader is. The fact of the matter is, who will bear the brunt of it? It is your family and it is you, right? So that is where you need to focus.
Right. And the reality is that the organization is not going to fall apart if
No.
you are in the hospital.
Yeah.
That work is either going to get done or it's not going to get done.
Yeah. Somebody else is going to have that heart attack because,
right.
And they'll take on your work.
And I mean, but part of what's so funny and interesting to me about this idea and about this sort of perpetual busyness that we have created is that when we do take a break, when we do stop, when we do step back, it's not, we're not actually all that important.
Right. And we don't know what to do with ourselves. Like I don't know about you, but initially when I took some time off and I had the kids were at school, my husband was working, and I had this couple of days off that I'd forced myself to take. It's what should I do with myself? Okay, maybe. So I made a long list. I should read this book. I should call 5 friends. I should write 4 emails. I should book myself on 2 podcasts. I should, write 2. And so there you go. Because, otherwise I would land up looking at my phone, right? I would land up looking at my phone, watching Insta, doing some snooping on Facebook or the other to say, oh my God, what about that trend? So it also has led to us not knowing what to do with ourselves because our mind now needs to be constantly engaged, right? Like we used to say that kids who have short attention span, that could lead to not so great outcomes. They could be diagnosed with ADHD, this and that. Adult ADHD has become so common now. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but I would say that we all feel like that right now, right? So if you don't look at your phone for, I don't know, a couple of hours, try it.
Right.
This need to look at it, right? And enough studies have come out which says that the same parts of your brain light up as when you do some drugs, right? I think cocaine or some other parts where the same parts of your brain light up. So that is it's almost like an addiction that we as a society, as a culture, as a country, as the entire globe, we've all become so used to it. So we are so distracted all of the time. That is why all of these meditation apps have become so popular, right? Because they're preaching to, so we'll give you a mindful moment. The reality is that you can have a mindful moment if you keep that screen away. If you just look at your, whoever that real person is in front of you, have a real conversation without bending to look down at your phone 5 times, and that kind of thing. So that is, I think, the crux of it. That is my message today. That do what's in your control, right? You can't fix the system all on its own unless you're the CEO of the company. Yeah. But I do believe that there's something you can do for yourself so that you get some time back, so that you do not experience time poverty.
Yeah. I love that. And, as I was listening to you talk, I was thinking about myself standing in line at the grocery store, and I will find myself pulling out my phone to distract myself because I'm bored standing in line for 5 minutes. What has happened to our ability to just stand in line and have a conversation with somebody, or stand in line and just think about something? We have this constant, we have hooked ourselves on this drug, on this constant need for distraction, and this myth of the importance of busyness. And I think our opportunity is to break ourselves of that, both of that habit and of that myth.
Absolutely. If you, all sports coaches will tell you that when you are mindful, when you are present, that's when you do give your peak performance, right? You look at your swimmers, you look at your any of your sportsmen. Why is that? They're the pause before they throw the ball or pause before they make the jump. It is to center yourself. It is to give yourself that breath that aligns you with your body. And no, this is not mumbo jumbo. This is not, the yoga that, oh my God, those deep breaths, I don't need them. The fact is that if we don't breathe properly, then our body does something for us, right? So no, it's not mumbo jumbo. It does cause, it's scientifically proven
Right.
to give you that moment, which makes you feel present, which makes you realize what's going on.
Yeah, the thing that I love about thinking about breath is that when we get hijacked, when we get triggered, when we get upset, often, depending upon what the thing is that's hijacking or triggering us, what can happen is we get thrown into our amygdala, into our fight, flight, freeze zone. And the thing that gets us out of it, the quickest and the easiest, is taking a deep breath. It literally resets our brain, because our brain realizes if I'm able to breathe deeply, I'm not actually running from a saber-toothed tiger.
Right.
Because that part of our brain, our amygdala, which is way back underneath the bottom of our skull, it was formed before we had speech, before we could talk. It does not know that it is 2023 and the saber-toothed tiger dangers are over. And so when we get freaked out, tensed up, afraid, overstimulated, which we can be doing with just using things like our phone, or going into, YouTube tunnels, or I was in a big YouTube tunnel last night, and I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, I should have been in bed 45 minutes ago. And I'd watched lots of things that made me laugh and smile, but what I needed to be doing was getting ready for sleep.
Right. What
I was doing instead was distracting myself with James Corden, which was, lovely and fun, but really not productive. And so when we take that deep breath, we return our brain to our prefrontal cortex, which is where we actually can think and have conscious thought.
Right.
And so, yes, there is nothing mumbo jumbo about the importance of breath and the importance of deep breath.
Right.
So as we start wrapping up for today, I want to ask you, is there anything that you are hoping that we might have an opportunity to touch on that we haven't yet? Or is there sort of a place where you would like to leave our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, I think I'd just like to leave people with this, that it's a big issue. It's not going to get solved in 5 minutes. But as I said that, if you're in a room full of clutter, you start somewhere. Yeah. So I would say start somewhere small. Maybe the phone is the most easiest thing to do, to say, right. If right now the phone report tells you that you've watched your phone for 3 hours, of which 2 hours was Instagram, maybe you reduce your Instagram watching time by 15 minutes and see how, and use that time instead to go for a walk or read a real book, or I don't know, just sit down and do nothing, and give yourself that space. Start small, start by 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And if it makes you feel good, do more of it. And starting small for me is always, whether it's my DEI clients or wherever, I always say start somewhere, right? Not starting is not an option.
Garima, thank you so much for your perspective and your wisdom and your deep understanding of this challenge that we are all in, and giving us some really easy places to get started, because not getting started, as you said, is not an option. I so appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you, Janine. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it as well.
I am Janine Hamner Holman, and this has been The Cost of Not Paying Attention. Remember, great leaders make great teams. Until next time.
On behalf of Janine Hamner Holman, thanks for paying attention. This has been The Cost of Not Paying Attention. Head on over to our website, www.janinehamner.com/podcast, for access to the show notes as well as additional resources. Remember, great leaders make great teams.